You're listening to Just a Dude podcast with your host, Nathan. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's roll. Hey there, folks. It's your host, Nathan. Just a Dude bringing you the latest on what's been shaken up in the United States this past week. We're covering July 11th to July 18th, 2025. This is Just a Dude in the News on Just a Dude podcast, where we keep it real, laid back, and break down the biggest stories without all the fluff. I've been digging through what's been going on from natural disasters to policy shifts, and we've got a packed lineup as usual. So grab a coffee, kick back, and let's dive into the top 10 news stories that had the nation talking this week. All right, let's start with a heavy one. Central Texas got slammed by flooding from July 4th to the 7th, and this week, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump flew down to survey the damages. Reports say 104 people lost their lives, with dozens still missing, making this one of the worst natural disasters in recent memory. The president promised federal support to rebuild, emphasizing the need to get communities back on their feet. It's a tough scene down there, with homes destroyed and folks trying to pick up the pieces. The floods tore through central Texas, leaving a trail of devastation. We're talking entire neighborhoods underwater, roads washed out, and families displaced. Local officials are saying the death toll could climb as search and rescue teams dig through the debris. The images coming out of places like Austin and San Antonio are just heartbreaking. Cars piled up like toys, homes reduced to rubble. Governor Greg Abbott's been on the ground too, coordinating with FEMA, though some folks are frustrated with the pace of aid. What's really hitting home is the human toll. Stories are coming out about neighbors helping neighbors, folks opening up their homes to those who lost everything. The president's visit was meant to shine a light on the recovery efforts, and he's pushing for emergency funds to flow fast. Some critics are saying the response should have been quicker, but others argue the scale of this disaster is just too overwhelming. Either way, Texans are showing that grit they're known for, banding together in a tough time. Looking ahead, the focus is on rebuilding and preventing this kind of loss in the future. There's talk about upgrading infrastructure, better levees, improved drainage systems, but for now, the priority is getting aid to those who need it most. If you're looking to help, there are plenty of local charities stepping up. Every single bit counts. Central Texas is going to need a lot of support to come back from this one. Switching gears, another heartbreaking loss out of Arizona this week. The historic Grand Canyon Lodge on the North Rim was destroyed in a massive wildfire over the weekend of July 12th. The blaze, fueled by dry conditions and high winds, tore through the area, reducing the nearly century-old lodge to ashes. This is the second time the lodge has burned down since it was first built in 1928, and it's got folks mourning the loss of a national treasure. The fire started small but spread really fast, and firefighters battling tough terrain and unpredictable winds couldn't get a hold of it easily. By the time it was contained, the lodge, known for its stunning views and rustic charm, was gone. No lives were lost, fortunately, but the damage is estimated in the millions, and the National Park Service is scrambling to figure out next steps. Park officials are saying the North Rim will stay closed to visitors for the rest of the season, which is a blow to tourism in the area. For a lot of Americans, the Grand Canyon Lodge was more than just a building. It was a bucket list destination. People are sharing memories online of staying there, watching sunsets over the canyon, or just soaking in the history. There's already talk about rebuilding, but it's going to take time and serious funding. Some folks are pushing for better fire prevention measures like controlled burns or upgraded fire breaks to protect the national parks. The big question now is what happens next. Rebuilding could take years, and there's debate over whether to recreate the original design or go modern. For local communities that rely on park visitors, the closure is going to hurt. If you're planning a trip to the Grand Canyon, check the Park Service's website for updates. This one's a tough loss, but it's also a reminder of how fragile our natural landmarks can be. Immigration's been a hot topic this week, as usual, with protests popping off across the U.S. after a wave of federal immigration raids. Demonstrations hit cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Atlanta, with some turning tense. Cops clashed with protesters, and parts of L.A. were under curfew, again. The raids are part of President Trump's push to crack down on illegal immigration, and they've got people fired up on both sides. One story out of California had a U.S. citizen jailed for 3 days after a raid, raising questions about how these operations are being handled. The protests are a reaction to ICE stepping up its game. Trump's administration says it's about enforcing the law and securing the border, pointing to stats showing illegal crossings are at historic lows. But critics argue the raids are too aggressive. sometimes sweeping up legal residents or folks who've been here for decades. In LA, you had police on horseback trying to break up crowds, while in New York, demonstrators were outside immigration courts holding signs and chanting for reform. The human stories are what's driving the emotion here. Take the Bhutanese refugees in Pennsylvania. Some who fled persecution decades ago are now facing questions about their status. Immigration advocates say many are stateless with nowhere to go. Then there's the case of journalist Mario Guevara in Georgia, arrested while covering a protest and now facing deportation after 20 years in the U.S. That's got folks crying foul, saying the system's gone too far. On the other side, supporters of the raid say it's about restoring order and prioritizing American citizens. The administration's doubling down, with Trump signing executive orders to keep the pressure on. But with protests spreading and lawsuits piling up, this issue's nowhere near settled. It's a messy debate, and it's got people talking about what fairness and security really mean. In the end of things, the executive branch is there to enforce the laws set by Congress. These immigration laws have been set by Congress for years, and the executive branch is just enforcing those laws. If we really want to see reform, it needs to start in Congress with the reformation of the laws that are on the books. Big news from the Supreme Court this week. They've cleared the way for the Trump administration to move forward with mass firings of federal employees. This is part of Trump's push to streamline the government, with folks like Elon Musk involved through the Department of Government Efficiency. The ruling's got some cheering for a leaner bureaucracy, while others are worried about gutting the essential services. It's a bold move, and it's already sparking lawsuits. The court's decision came down on July 15th, and is a green light for Trump to reshape the federal workforce. The administration's targeting what they call bloat, with plans to cut agencies like USAID and trim staff across the board. Supporters say this is a long overdue process. Government's gotten too big, and taxpayers shouldn't be footing the bill for inefficiency. The Department of Government Efficiency, formerly led by Elon Musk, is pushing hard to make this happen fast. But not everyone's on board. Critics are sounding alarms, saying these cuts could cripple programs people rely on, like disaster relief or health services. There's also worry about the precedent. Can the government just fire career employees without much oversight? Dozens of lawsuits are already challenging the legality of these moves, and federal workers' unions are gearing up for a fight. The State Department's already feeling the heat, with reports of USAID positions being slashed. For the average dude, this could mean a smaller government footprint, which some folks want, but it might also mean longer waits for services or less support in a crisis. It's a high-stakes gamble, and the fallout's going to depend on how these cuts are rolled out. Keep an eye on this one. It's going to be a bumpy ride for some time to come. Switching to California, there's a big shakeup with the high-speed rail project. On July 16th, President Trump pulled $4 billion in federal funding for the long-troubled rail line, calling it a waste of taxpayer money. The project's been a lightning rod for years, with costs ballooning and delays piling up. Supporters of the decision say it's about fiscal responsibility, but critics argue it's a blow to infrastructure and green energy goals. This rail project was supposed to connect Los Angeles to San Francisco, cutting travel time and easing the traffic. But it's been plagued by problems. Costs are now over $100 billion, and it's nowhere near done. Trump's move to yank funding isn't a total surprise. He's been skeptical of it for years. His team says the money's better spent elsewhere, like on roads or disaster relief. California Governor Gavin Newsom called it a political hit, vowing to fight the decision in court. The reaction split. Some Californians are frustrated, saying the rail could have been a game changer for jobs and the environment. Others are cheering, arguing the project was a boondoggle from the start. Local businesses along the proposed route are worried about losing economic boosts, while taxpayers are just tired of footing the bill for something that might never get finished. What's next? California is looking at private investors to keep the dream alive, but that's a tough sell with the feds out. This move's also got folks debating bigger questions about infrastructure spending. How do you balance ambition with accountability? For now, the high-speed rail is on life support, and it's anyone's guess if it'll ever get back on track. If there is ever a track. The fight against fentanyl overdoses hit a snag this week, with funding delays for a key federal grant program. 49 states, including Kansas, are facing holdups for $140 million meant to help public health departments battle the crisis. Fentanyl has been a growing problem, killing thousands every year, and these delays are raising alarms about gaps in the addiction safety net. Fentanyl's a monster, cheap, deadly, and everywhere. The grants in question fund things like treatment programs, overdose prevention, and outreach to at-risk communities. But bureaucratic red tape and budget fights in Washington are slowing things down. Experts are warning that any delay could mean more lives lost, especially in places like rural Kansas, where resources are already stretched thin. On one hand, some folks are saying the government needs to get its act together and prioritize this funding. Fentanyl doesn't wait for paperwork. On the other, there's push to make sure every dollar is spent wisely, with accountability for how these programs are run. The Trump administration's been vocal about cracking down on drug trafficking, sanctioning groups like Los Chapitos in Mexico, but critics say that's only half the battle. For communities hit hard by addiction, this is personal. Families are losing loved ones, and first responders are burning out. There's hope Congress will sort this out soon, but for now, states are scrambling to fill the gap with local funds. If you know someone struggling, there are still hotlines and clinics out there doing what they can. If you're struggling with addiction or alcohol and can't seem to find the resources, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you get the resources you need to fight your addiction. On the global stage, President Trump made waves this week by threatening tariffs on Russia over its war with Ukraine. This came alongside news that the U.S. had suspended intelligence sharing with Ukraine, a move that's got folks scratching their heads. Trump's pushing for a tougher stance on Russia while trying to avoid deeper U.S. involvement in the conflict. It's a tricky balancing act, and it's got people talking. The tariff threat is classic Trump, using economic leverage to send a message. He's been vocal about wanting to end the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and these tariffs could hit Russia's economy hard, especially its energy exports. But the decision to pause intelligence sharing with Ukraine raised some eyebrows. Some say it's a pragmatic move to avoid escalation. Others think it's leaving an ally in the lurch. The reaction's been mixed. Supporters argue Trump's trying to force a resolution without dragging the U.S. into another war. Critics, though, say it's sending mixed signals and could weaken Ukraine's position. The U.S. and Russia are set to hold talks in Saudi Arabia soon, without Ukraine at the table, which has some folks worried about what's being negotiated. For the average American, this might feel far away, but it could mean higher gas prices or economic ripples if tensions escalate. Trump's betting on economic pressure to shift the needle, but with global stakes this high, it's anyone's guess how it'll play out. Keep an eye on this. It's a big one. In Colorado, a high-profile murder trial kicked off this week. James Craig is accused of poisoning his wife of 23 years, Angela, and trying to cover it up by asking his cellmate to take out the lead investigator. The trial's got folks glued to their screens, with all the twists of a true crime drama. It's a grim story, but it's shining a light on domestic violence and justice. The details are chilling. Prosecutors say Craig slipped poison into his wife's protein shakes, leading to her death. He allegedly tried to pin it on other causes, but investigators caught on. The cellmate plot added another layer of crazy. Craig reportedly offered money to silence the detective leading the case. The trial's playing out in district court, and it's drawing crowds and cameras. What's striking is how this case has sparked bigger conversations. Domestic violence advocates are pointing out how often these situations escalate quietly, and they're pushing for more resources for victims. On the other side, Craig's defense is arguing there's more to the story, questioning the evidence and the narrative. It's a messy case, and the public's eating it up, with social media buzzing about every detail. For now, the trial's just getting started, and it's anyone's guess how it'll end. But it's a reminder of how quickly things can spiral in relationships and how the justice system handles these tragedies. If you or someone you know needs help, there are hotlines like the National Domestic Violence Hotline that can make a difference. Some good news out of Congress this week. That's rare. A bipartisan effort to protect veterans from losing their homes. After both parties' administrations cut safety nets for VA homeowners, lawmakers stepped in to pass a bill ensuring vets at risk of foreclosure get the support that they need. It's a rare moment of unity in Washington, and it's got folks feeling really hopeful. This issue came up because of gaps in the VA's programs. Vets were falling through the cracks and facing eviction despite their service. The new bill aims to fix that, offering loan modifications and other protections to keep families in their homes. It's a big deal for thousands of veterans, especially those struggling with rising costs or medical bills. Both sides of the aisle came together on this one, which is refreshing to see. Supporters say it's about honoring those who have served, making sure they're not left high and dry. I agree with that. There's been some grumbling about the cost, but most agree it's a small price to pay for doing right by our vets. The bill's headed to the president's desk, and he's expected to sign it. For the average dude, this is a reminder that sometimes government can get it right. If you know a vet who's struggling, point them toward the VA or local nonprofits. They've got resources to help. It's not often we see Congress play nice, so let's give credit where it's due. Finally, a bittersweet note. The music world lost a legend this week with the passing of Connie Francis, the 1960s pop star who topped the charts with hits like Who's Sorry Now. She died at 86, leaving behind a legacy of over 40 million records sold. Her music defined an era, and fans are mourning while celebrating her impact. Connie was a trailblazer, the first woman to hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Her voice was everywhere in the 60s, from jukeboxes to movie soundtracks. She had this way of making every song feel personal, whether it was a ballad or an upbeat tune. Fans on social media are sharing clips of her performances, and it's clear she touched a lot of lives. Her passing has got folks reflecting on the golden age of pop. She wasn't just a singer, she was a cultural force, breaking barriers for women in music. Some are pointing out how her struggles with mental health and personal tragedies made her even more relatable. The tributes are pouring in that show how much she meant to so many. For those of us who grew up with her music, it's a moment to pause and remember. Maybe throw on one of her records this week and appreciate what she brought to the table. Rest in peace, Connie. You left one heck of a mark. And that's a wrap on this week's Top 10 News Stories, folks. From floods in Texas to the loss of a musical icon, it's been a wild week. This is Just a Dude in the News on Just a Dude Podcast, and I'm your host, Nathan, keeping it real and breaking it down. If you want to dive deeper, check out sources like Reuters, NPR, and the National Park Service's website for the full scoop. Let me know what you think on social media, and we'll catch you next week for more of what's going on in the U.S. Stay safe out there, and keep being awesome dudes and dudettes. I'll catch you on the next episode.